So here we are on another issue of Attacking the Backlog, and this game was way in the back of that backlog. Let me tell you, this is from like PlayStation 4, like first gen PlayStation 4. It's a game that I got launch day. I played a few hours and then just never really went back to it. And the same thing happened again later when it released on the Nintendo Switch. This game is called Dying Light. So here's the crazy thing. I just started playing it on a whim like last week, and I just couldn't put the game down. And I had Tears of the Kingdom, on Friday. I was still playing Dying Light. I was making excuses for why I should play Dying Light instead. And I'm not saying it's better. It's not. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it was so addictive and I was in this place with this game that I just had to ride it out. And for me, it was one of those games that when it was over, I was kind of sad. I was sad to see it go. I was really enjoying that experience. And even though technically I've probably had this game for about a decade, I'd finally figured out how I enjoyed it the best. And how that was through crafting. I'm not usually a big fan of crafting. It's not something that I typically look for in a game. Now, I understand that has become such an integral part of so many games, but this game, it really does start to solidify that once you realize that you can utilize the blueprints, you can disassemble your weapons, and you can create like these just badass weapons. And also, not to mention how to level up properly. That was something that I just really didn't get. I mean, I understood it, I just didn't really apply it that often, I'll say that. Now, I want to go back to the story real quick, and that is, you are a GRE agent. You're being dropped into a place that is just filled with zombies and monsters. You're essentially looking for a cure for this, at least you think. It turns out you're actually looking for a way to weaponize it, because of course you are. And honestly, that made this game a lot more lifelike. And while you're on your mission, you end up meeting a lot of people, and you end up really liking them, and even falling in love with one of them. I'm not going to say what happens, I'm not going to give anything else away, but what I am going to say is, when you find out the corporation's true intent, that's when you have to take things into your own hand. But that's not your only obstacle here. You see, there's a psycho who is using this chaos to further his own growth, and he is also wanting to work with the GRE and other governments, and maybe even other corporations. So you have to deal with him as well. Now, all of this wraps up into being a pretty enjoyable, likable, fun story that keeps the game going forward, even though there are some points where, man, the parkour aspect really, at times, will slow this game down, because you just can't figure out how to get from point A to point B. Thank God for YouTube and walkthrough videos. And this only happens like once or twice, but when it does, it is super annoying, and it's really, without them, I would have never figured it out, to be honest. There's aspects where they expect your character to jump like all the way across the screen, and you didn't really think they could do it, but guess what? They can. They definitely can. Outside of that, I would say that the big thing that I learned and why I enjoyed the game this second time or third time of playing it was just the idea that I realized, you gotta run everywhere. You gotta run and jump everywhere. That's how you upgrade your agility, and your agility actually gives you other moves. You can also do a thing where you basically run and jump on the zombies, and it stuns them. You can turn around and do a finishing move. All of this really helps level you up. And unfortunately for me, agility was something I never really leveled up too much, because it wasn't until the about halfway point of the game that I figured this out. And now, you know what? It was probably towards the last quarter of the game that I figured this out. So I was kind of running old school, where you go silent and then you use a melee weapon to take them out. But had I known that every opportunity to jump or to do some sort of parkour move would have really helped me out, I would have gone back and done that different. See, there's three things that you can upgrade. There's power, survivor, and agility. And all of them have a skill tree off of that that'll give you different abilities or power-ups in a way. Like, for instance, one of the power-ups thing is throwing weapons. Like, if you really invest your time in that, you can make like where a throwing knife is incredibly strong, like stronger than a bullet. But again, that's something that you have to kind of really invest your time in. There's many options. Now, the power is the one that I maxed out because that was the one I used the most. And to be honest, I wish I would have gone with the agility. There were so many opportunities for like cool stuff to happen in all of them. Now, Survivor, by the way, is the one that basically just don't die. If you just don't die, and then you also take over camps and do side quests and save civilians, like stuff like that, that'll help you raise your Survivor skill. But every time you die, you actually lose points in that, so it is partially just don't die. Now, there's a lot of really important skills in there as well. So this game definitely gives you this like option to create your own character in a sense, you know, what you're really good at. Now, the bad thing is, if you're really good at shooting, this game does not help you. That's one of the downsides of this game, and its combat. Gunplay sucks, and, you know, part of it is, and this really starts with the aiming, as it just doesn't feel right. It feels very awkward. Like, to look down the sights of the weapon, you have to hit the right stick. You have to click it in. Now, most of us are used to the L2. That's how you look down the sights of a weapon, but nope. And, you know, it even gets worse than that, because there is no real targeting or locking on system, which is fine, I get that, but then there's also no gyro aiming. So, you're really just using a stick from afar away while you're being shot at, and that's the problem. You know, when you're fighting, like zombies or big monsters and stuff like that, no big deal. In fact, guns are pretty awesome, especially like the Hellblazer, which is like this awesome double barrel shotgun. Although when enemies are shooting back at you, yeah, it's really difficult. I ended up using a bow and arrow more than I end up using a gun against people who are shooting guns at me, just because I could at least aim it a little bit better. It felt a little bit better. And it has retrievable ammo, and the fact that you can do more damage with it. But that's just my thoughts on the gunplay. I didn't like it, and it's one of the very few things in this game that I really didn't like. Everything else about it just feels great. I mean, the performance, sure, isn't as good as the PS4, but it does hold up really well for the Switch. Not to mention the graphics. Again, it's not going to give you the best looking graphics you can get for the game, but it still looks really impressive for the Switch. I was taken back by just how lifelike and engrossing this game really does become, especially on something like a handheld device like the Switch. Although, if I'm being honest, the thing that really got me into this game was the Hell Raid mode, which is something new. It's included with the Definitive edition, and it is basically playable through an arcade system, and it takes you on this whole other mode where you're kind of just collecting stuff, and you're going into this, like, I don't know, hellscape of sorts, where you're just fighting tons of enemies, and there is a story that does develop, but it is kind of loose-fitting, if you know what I mean. Like, it's very hard to track down exactly what happens, and by the time you do, I would be ruining things for you. But the most important take from this is the access it gives you to weapons, and these weapons are stronger than pretty much anything else you can get in the game, and you can get them relatively early in the game. Now, this might be game-breaking for some people, but for me, I kind of liked having that in my back pocket, that I could just pull this out and just wail away on, you know, certain enemies that are more difficult. Now, that doesn't help you with, like, the screamers or even the dudes that blow up and whatever, considering they're all melee. But it's just the idea of having something that you could just kind of run through town, and while you're running, just whacking the crap out of zombies and ending them. As where with some other weapons, you easily get stuck in the swarm of zombies. But ultimately, I really enjoyed this game. So much. I am so glad I went back to play it. If you are thinking about getting it, or you just want to put it on your wish list to see, you know, whenever it has a sale or something like that, I would definitely recommend doing that, because it's just a lot of fun. It's one of the best, like, first-person survival horror games I've played on the Switch. Maybe even the best. I feel like it could definitely be in that range. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Dying Light, the Definitive Edition. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you like horror games? Is this something you've played before? Anything and everything down in the comment section, much appreciated. I love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.